The Lost Signals present
I see the gruel is ready.
a celebration of international horror and another Halloween sequel
Michael Myers is outside.
with in-depth analysis,
تو پسر خوب هستی.
adult content, adult language,
Oh my god.
and spoilers.
Сталкеру нельзя входить в комнату.
Join us.
Aren't I lucky I got a chunky bit?
Hello there, welcome back to MOTS-O-Ween 2019. And as we continue our foreign sub-horror genre journey, tonight we're going to review a film from a Spanish/French production, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It is called
Basque.
Errementari. I may be mispronouncing that, but I'm trying the best I can. It is a horror sort of fairy tale story from available on Netflix, and came out in 2016 and or 17, depending on the region. I am your medieval host, Scott Thurlow, and I'm here with my apprentices/demons, Stephen Amosi.
How you doing?
Jonathan Ian Manzer.
John, some chickpeas.
And Chris Morgan.
Oh no, not the chickpeas.
Not the chickpeas.
Not the chickpeas.
Yep. So I'll throw out the logline for this one. This is a stolen phrase from elsewhere. I can't remember where exactly I saw it, but I like it. I think it fits. It is, Errementari is both humanizing demons and demonizing humans at the same time. So with that, Steve-O, why don't you tell us about the plot?
I like it. So we open on a war in the early 1800s. There is a firing line happening. I guess it's supposed to be towards the end of the war.
Yeah.
One side opens fire upon a bunch of
Captured rebels.
yeah,
essentially.
like POWs, I guess. And one of them survives and takes down one of his captors, and escapes ostensibly. Turns out that this is going to be the
titular
main,
blacksmith?
the blacksmith. Oh yes, that's right. I don't think we mentioned
Errementari does mean blacksmith.
So Errementari
Smithery.
means smithy, and the subtitle of this movie is Blacksmith of the Devil. Anyway, moving on, we go from there to, we fast forward to
like 8 years or something.
8 years later, and it's this little Basque town. I'm not sure if they're in Spain or France. I don't think it particularly matters all that much. I assume Spain. Because
It was shot in both locations. So
Okay.
I mean, both countries have
Yeah.
their issues with demon invasion.
Yeah.
True.
Well, yeah, isn't that where
Long
Faust,
history of demon invasions.
Faust was French, right? Yeah.
No, German. But
Oh, that's
doesn't matter.
right.
All of Europe has problems.
Sorry, yeah, the whole European thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, and don't go to Sweden. Saw another
Here
Sweden.
or unregardless. We move on to 8 years later, and there is this little town that we are kind of introduced to. There's a mass happening, and then people are wondering where the little girl Ushu is. Turns out she's in the woods performing some kind of strange rites with the
She's playing tea.
playing
Tea party.
Yeah.
No. But she's stolen the wine.
She stole the Sacramento wine.
She
play
stole
tea
the
party.
Sacramento wine to play tea party.
And she was hanging out with a snake too, which was awesome.
Yeah, she makes friends with the snake, and then a kid kills it. Anyway, we're getting
Those two little
too
shitheads.
detailed.
Yeah.
So basically, we are introduced to this little girl who's going to be one of the main characters. She is playing out in the woods. She goes to find. She like wanders around, and then eventually some kids who are sent to find her.
And are assholes to her, as kids are going to be.
And are jerks, and she fights back most bravely and awesomely by kicking one kid in the balls, etc.
Yep.
They rip a head off the doll, throw the head into this
the forbidden blacksmith.
compound, I guess, like where the blacksmith lives. And then we start to learn more about the blacksmith, who is kind
In
of this...
fairy tale style, isn't the beast you thought he was.
Right, exactly. So
I was going to
like,
go with the Boo Radley thing for logline, by the way, but
so
in that sense, yeah.
obviously, eventually, she makes her way in there, meets him. Turns out he is housing a devil or of
As you
sorts,
A demon.
a demon of sorts,
A low-level ranking demon from hell.
named Sartael, and he's keeping him chained there because, as it turns out, the demon said that he could live through the war to get back to his wife as long as he gave him his soul. So instead of giving him his soul, he just chained the demon up.
Outsmarted him.
Yeah. Eventually, the townsfolk kind of find out what's going on. They try to storm the compound, and everything goes horribly, horribly wrong. I did not mention there is an interloper in the town who poses as like a government agent, and as it turns out, when they go in there, he is one of the higher demons.
He's actually
I
a
guess,
hell
in
agent. Yes.
Yeah.
He's upper management.
Ends up making a deal with the little girl because her mother had hanged herself, and as she's been told, because
Her
it's a
soul
very
is in
Christian
hell,
nation, yeah, her soul is in hell. So she makes a deal with this higher demon to go back to hell.
To be fair, it is established that the Judeo-Christian tradition is correct.
Yes, it
Exists
is.
and is real.
It is.
So it's
If you
very
believe in
likely-
Christianity, you are right, according to this movie. But so the little girl gets brutally murdered, and then goes to hell. The blacksmith, having formed a bond with her, decides to go chase after her and try and save her.
Well, no, you forgot one part. She voluntarily asks him
Wait,
to go
he
to hell.
forgot a part in that.
Yeah,
description of it?
no, but the thing
I've
is,
skipped quite a bit.
Yeah, but no,
I'm trying to
no.
speed
Hold on a
this up.
second. No. That is an important distinction that she offers herself up after the priest that took her in, like smacks her. She's like, "Fuck you! I want to go to hell and look for my mom."
Yeah, no.
100th time of her life.
I agree, but like I will. In my defense, I did say she makes a deal with the devil to go to hell, or with the demon to go to hell.
Okay, I didn't hear that, Steve. I'm my most humble apologies.
But so she goes. The blacksmith chases in after her after forming this bond with her throughout the rest of the film, and then turns out he has this awesome demon
Blessed Bell.
hurting
Brian
bell
Blessed Bell.
that he just wanders into hell, annoying demons. Good reference.
If he's going to hell, he's going on his own terms.
And searching for his wife, who is actually, as it turns out, also Ushu, the little girl's mother.
Ushu's alive.
And then Ushu comes back and presumably lives happily ever after in a pumpkin or something. I forget what the specific wording was, but yeah, that's the very basic plot. I've skipped over a bunch, and I hope that we all talk about it, but I'm going to turn it over to everybody else now.
No, I mean, like, you're right. It's basically a dark fairy tale. It's like a fairy tale-esque setup that you've seen a number of times and utilizes a number of tropes and elements from that, which we discussed in the past. And, like, throws them all into, like, a sort of, not a blender per se, but, like, from this culture, from this region. It's a very Grimnian tale, as Ian mentioned, precast.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but, like, that is a good point. So this is a very old, I guess, Basque fairy tale that has been told for a long time, but the Brothers Grimm did
co-opted it. You know what I mean?
collect all of it
Yeah.
and put it and release it in the
Cultural-
early 1800s.
Cultural appropriation.
Yeah, so given all that for what it is, like, it was enjoyable enough, like, because you know what you're getting into pretty much early on, like, it's set up as such, like, it's framed in that dark fairy tale style. And I think it works for the most part. Like, it hits a lot of the points, again, familiar for the most part, like, to a large degree. And a lot of, like, I think a lot of what makes it pretty solid goes into, like, other questions we'll get to. But I think for narrative, like, for the plot, I'm looking at a pretty strong 2. So that's my score. I'm throwing it out there, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
I agree with that sentiment because it's. I have to compare this to Pan Flapper because
Yeah, I
they're
got you.
both similar regions, similar tradition. Pan Flapper is a much more skilled put together movie versus this one, which feels maybe I don't mean this necessarily as a criticism, but it feels a little bit more like TV movie.
Yeah, I mean,
Then,
slower production value is all.
But yeah, it's well put together, but it misses something in there to elevate it to a great movie. But it's an enjoyable kind of what I would imagine if I were a kid watching this on like a Saturday morning would have been great. That kind of darker. Although it does take some dark twists that I didn't see coming. I do appreciate overall the narrative that we've already gotten pretty into depth about. But there's twist turns, betrayals,
etc.
Everyone has almost a redemption arc in this, or they're the monsters you thought they were. So yeah, overall I think it's a good 2.
It's really funny because aside from Pan's Labyrinth, I was also thinking of Polanski's film Fearless Vampire Killers, because it has that.
Seen it.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It does have that kind of small town, kind of not over the top, mild slapstick-esque kind of pacing. I have to say one thing. This is one caveat, that this is not what I would grade a 10 movie. It is not a 10 movie. However, I fucking
You
enjoyed.
might give it a 10.
No, I mean, but I'm saying I'm giving it a 3 because I fucking. As I agree at the end that there were a couple of things that did take me off surprise, but I just enjoyed the hell out of watching this thing. I was never bored. I was always entertained, and I just enjoyed it. It's not like a deep film by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a really enjoyable film. I enjoyed the hell out of it, and I thought narratively it worked. I don't feel like there's nothing superfluous in it. I thought it was a pretty tight narrative, so I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought that it was good. The plot was never... Well, it is a ridiculous plot on its face, but like it never like went too far or like went too outrageous.
Stretch itself. Yeah.
Insane.
It played by its own rules very well.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, that's a good point as well.
I am going to give it a 2 along with you guys because it just wasn't... While it was a fairly good plot, it wasn't as tight as I thought it could have been, and I'm going to detract a little bit for that.
Yeah, I feel you. I just a final thought is that at this point, I think a 3 is like well above and beyond like your standard stuff. This was standard, but handled well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, if the narrative was faulty, like in other words, I would have given it a 2, but because it held my interest the whole time, and I thought
fair. Alrighty.
Yeah, I just want to make that distinction. That's why I said that.
I got you. Well, let us move on then. 2 themes, and it'll be you, Ian.
So there's 2 parts I wanted to discuss about this.
Okay.
One is the standard kind of fairy tale things about like the main character, the Yusei, or the little girl, has a mark on her face and she's an outcast. And you have the blacksmith who is kind of the beast. So it's not that you like.
Boo Radley, the blacksmith.
People who are who you might think are the villains aren't always that way. Just like the Beauty and the Beast and all of that.
Right.
Versus people who are like the priest on there, and also the demons who seem like they're good people, or at least attempted to portray that, might actually be evil on the inside, or at least selfish. So yeah, that's kind of standard fairy tale thing. What's more interesting to me is I feel that not having much knowledge about the history of Spain and the cultural fights that went in there, I feel that this almost has an economic message. Because the main demon is a guy from the government coming into a small town, promising them gold. Literally, the demons in there are bean counters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel that there is that kind of thing about the
Aspect,
small town life, and that kind of like the church isn't what it used to be. It's not performing the role it should be, and like these people are suffering and going through kind of the war depression there. And I think that the government takeover of that area. And I feel like if I knew more about Spanish history, because they kind of presuppose a lot of your knowledge in this.
Yeah, that's true.
And
so
I'm like, when I get a hint that there is a deeper, because a lot of the great fairy tales, like Wizard of Oz, things like that, were originally economic messages. And I feel that this has it there, even if I'm not aware of what that message is.
No, I do like that, and I again, knowing what we know, which granted is not as much as it possibly could be, and versus other areas, then yeah, like I could definitely see that. Like I do like the fact that like the bureaucrat comes in like the demon disguised as it, like looking for lost war gold, right? But really he's trying to bring the lost demon back to hell who fucked up and like has been captured for 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I mean, you're right. Like, it works kind of like on that level and also like your standard fairy tale level, as we said. And I think that's fine too. So good, Chris.
I was going to say that's great because Alistair does act like upper management. Like before they go in there, he's just like, okay, I can't go in. You guys go in. Like he sends the underlings to do the work. And then he punishes.
Well, because he literally couldn't go in because it was covered in crosses.
Yeah, but like if you're going to use the corporate financial allegory, you have him going in there, and then you punish middle management for not doing their job when literally they got caught up in something systemic, and they're like, okay, we're going to demote you. I mean, it does have a really good as far as, I don't mean good corporate structure, like corporate structures are good.
But it follows what would be corporate structure.
Yeah.
Also, yes, you're saying.
Hell has the best bureaucracy around.
They even said hell does not leave any loose ends. I'm here to demote you. You fucked up the contract with the human soul. All that.
I mean, it's really funny from like Supernatural to Good Omens and over. It's so funny how everybody lately describes heaven and hell, and I mean lately, the last 15, 20 years, as a bureaucracy. Like everything is. That is, I kind of see that.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think that it's that's really interesting. I am now wondering, because the idea of like demons, if there are beans spilled, have to count them. I wonder if that is where the term bean counter came from. Probably not.
Yeah,
but like
yeah,
it might be.
Probably.
But I do like this idea of hell as a bureaucracy and kind of the struggle between the modern, like especially like at this time, right? Like the early 1800s, the struggle between like becoming more industrialized and modern versus like the church running everything,
like the rural town,
the like government taking over versus church and all that stuff, and that's all in there. I do like the themes of this as far as they go. I don't think they run like, I don't think they get really, really invested in trying to make you
explore them all that deeply.
Explore all this stuff, but I think that they do a really good job of saying what they want to say and like getting into the more fun fairy tale part of it.
I don't know how intelligent it is because of my lack of knowledge.
That's true. I might be missing a lot.
But I kind of have an inkling that even if it's not the deepest thing in the world, that it has more to say. If I knew what the history was.
That's true. That's true. So I'm going to give it a 1 either way. But that being said, that's something to think about and maybe explore a little bit further.
You actually brought up something before cast to how like Americans assume everyone knows about the Civil War, so we don't have to feel the need to explain the politics of the Civil War. Yeah. We can just, and I feel like in a way they just assume your knowledge of the Spanish, the Basque region.
I sort of get that sensation a bit as well, and like I was going to give it probably a 1 anyway because any fairy tale worth its salt should get a 1 on themes regardless. But on top of like the layer you mentioned, on top of that, it's a very good possibility, and I certainly saw at least gleamings of it. Even if I don't understand like the hardcore.
One last piece of evidence is the fact that, and this is going to dialogue a little bit actually, but they purposely chose to have this spoken in Basque by actual fluent speakers of Basque. So it's there was an intention.
They certainly had something in mind,
which wasn't a legal language for a very long time.
Yep.
It was because of the war, I believe, that became like a contested thing.
Was it a Franco thing? Was it Franco that outlawed?
I have no idea because we don't know.
Look
the
it up,
as we said.
No,
because you tell us,
because a lot of Del Toro's films, like Pan's Labyrinth and The Devil's Backbone, are definitely take place during that period of time. So,
well, what are you giving it, Chris?
I'm giving it a 1. Hell yeah! And the other thing is about like proving the Christian mythos is right. They also comment on it like it being stupid. So like going to hell and also the vision, the people lining up to go to hell also kind of reminded me of God of War in a weird way.
Sorry, I do have one part of it. One of I think the best scenes is when they're closing the doors to hell and everyone's rushing inside.
Everyone's like,
and the one guy in particular who's a masochist is like, I want to be punished.
Scum, I'm nothing. Yeah, that's true.
That is great. Like everybody runs to get inside of hell.
Yeah,
and it's like they just don't want to be left outside of the gates.
Yeah, it's perfect commentary. All right, so it's 1 round on themes, and Chris, actually, you can go on. The antagonist or antagonistic forces.
I'm going to say corporate hell is the antagonist, because as you think the blacksmith, and then you think Sartell, they set them up as a potential antagonist, but really the antagonist is the bureaucratic mentality of hell. I mean, that Alistair represents. I mean, because he is the one sign of compassion that he shows is when Usu asks, I want to go see my mom in hell, and he's like, are you sure? Take my hand. And then he's like, haha, I got you. But the thing
You're
is,
a demon. That's what you do.
yeah, but the thing is, were it not for him, I mean, we would not have the redemption arc of the blacksmith. We would not have the redemption arc of Sartell, because if he hadn't gone looking for these things, then it would have ended when she left and the blacksmith recaptured Sartell. God, I'm fucking that up. Sartell. So I'm definitely going to say that Alistair is probably the antagonist. Corporate hell is the antagonist if we're going to go along with the corporate thematic. Jesus Christ.
The themic.
Themes. See, that's what I get for calling Christian mythology stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me blaspheme for a second.
Okay, please.
You can't be angry at an animal for being an animal. And that's the demons there by nature are
That's what they do.
conniving monsters, yes. You can't humanize them. So, who's the real villain? The humans.
Of course, I'm going to say that. Like, I think it's both, of course. That's why I led off with that log line. And if I told you guys precast, if I didn't say it for that, I was going to say it right here in themes, because it sort of does both. And like, good fairy tales will do that. Like, the monster isn't who you think it is. Everything's a little bit more complex. Now, you can rabbit hole yourselves the complexity of corporatocracies, if you will, of Christian mythology, more or less. But I think, yeah, like, even the blacksmith, of course, feels more than his fair share of degree of guilt. And, like, the churches seem to be a bit corrupt, more than a bit corrupt even, right? Because humans fall prey to temptations. Whether or not they're being, like, led there by literal demons or not, it's all still there. And, like, it falls in line to, like you said, like, the morality of a fairy tale in that sense, and has the layer that you mentioned just before E, I think. I think they both are there and serve as the antagonistic forces for many characters.
And the humans are corrupted by money because their motivation is also to find the gold. And
the local yokels think there's gold.
The priest is corrupted by pride. The locals are corrupted by money.
They all have
most
their own
most
sins.
of the characters decide that they can like use this demon, and obviously that's not going to work. I think that there's a really interesting argument to be had here about just human nature, and like you said, you know, like you can't be mad at an animal for being an animal, but in the same way, humans are just like led by their nature for the most part in this movie.
In Christian mythology, if you have it, humans have free will, while demons are creatures of evil who are temptation. So
they're just doing their job, man. Pretty much.
I'm reversing it and hate the sinner and also dislike the sin.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot more to say about that, but we can't get into it right now. But I would say that I think that it is a really interesting conversation to be had about the antagonist of what is actually the antagonist of this movie, and I think that pretty much anywhere you come down, I think it's an interesting,
pretty effective
so
either way. Yeah,
I'm going to give it a 1.
Okay.
Yep, me too.
Very nice. And that shall bring me to protagonist. So I think we're going to go with Usu and possibly the blacksmith. Almost a 50-50 split, more or less, right? It's clear, as an audience, we know that they're related in some way and more closely than they might think. And they after about the third of the movie, they form a bond. Yeah, good.
But also less closely than you might imagine.
Right, that's
So
true.
it's both of those.
You initially think that they are she's actually his daughter,
Exactly.
but then you find out she's not.
Right, so it's sort of a good slow roll there, but like nevertheless they form a bond, and they one of the funny things, like they taunt the demon together after like she's tricked into basically setting it free because she thinks it's a child being held by the blacksmith, but then she realizes what's actually going on. It's an actual demon, and he recaptures it, and then they sort of start the bond over that, and they realize like who they are, connection to each other. And I think actually the little girl, like her actress was really good.
Yeah.
I like you said, I like her spunk, like she didn't take shit from anybody, right? She knew who she was.
She stole the sacrament of wine, and I am totally...
Yeah.
I'm down with that.
And the blacksmith, again, like also had more layers to him than, of course, than a character like this on the surface you normally expect to have in a story of this nature. And I think, again, portrayal from the actor was really, really good. Sorry, I don't have the names offhand. But either way, I think they're pretty solid, pretty effective, and of course they had the arc, and the very last scene is, again, him bringing the bells to hell, if you will, or at least a bell, to, ostensibly, the implication is to me, to rescue his long-lost wife from hell.
Yeah.
It's basically the ending to Bad Taste.
Okay. Which, if you like that one, I'm gonna say like very nice. Take it easy, Chris.
Chris
But
can't.
good
Chris
point.
can't control himself right now.
But yeah, I think they're both effective and solid. I like their journey. Like they had significant, or at least arcs that made sense within the framework of the story. So
Yeah.
I have one thing to say. The actor who played the blacksmith has some of the kindest eyes.
I agree.
Santa Claus eyes.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
this is not a bad person just by looking at his eyes.
He's a broken man, but not a bad man.
Yeah.
Then one of the first subversion in this was when I saw the kid in the cage. I'm like, I immediately thought of the Howling Man, the Twilight Zone episode.
I figured you'd bring that up.
And I'm like, this is going to be a tale of like you can catch the devil, but you can't keep him. So the first subversion was that it wasn't the devil. Then I go to Beth. I'm like, oh, then the accountant's the devil, and it turned out he wasn't. I mean, it keeps going back to that corporate
The whole bureaucracy.
Yeah. But I agree. I
Layers
think
and layers.
I think Usu is a great protagonist. I thought the actress did a fantastic job. I agree that the blacksmith shares a good part of filling in the parts that she can't because of her age. And I agree. He's just great, kind eyes. Just, one.
Yeah, I think the blacksmith has a good redemption arc without like hammering you over the head with it.
Yeah, good call.
And I think that
Funny because he's a blacksmith.
he hammers other people over the head, but not
But the
you.
movie does not hammer you.
Go
on.
And I think that Yushu. And by the way, the reason we haven't been saying the blacksmith's name is because it's impossible to pronounce.
It's difficult.
It's Patxi. How do you pronounce that? I don't know.
Pat.
Somebody I'm sure will tell me and yell at me, but
It's Pat. It's cool.
It's Pat.
Pat. It's Pat. But the little girl, Yushu, is terrific, as you guys have already mentioned. She does a great job, and they're both really good characters and play off of each other really well throughout the movie. So I'm going to give protagonist a strong one.
Yes, sir. All right. Why don't you carry on, Steve-O, then, with the secondary characters?
All right. So secondary characters, there is the innkeeper, Santi, I suppose.
And his drunken regulars.
And yeah, his drunken regulars. There is the priest, nun.
The priest and the nun, yeah.
And the priest. There are Benito, the little kid who's a jerk off.
As Benito's generally are.
Standard. But there's a lot of these secondary characters. I'm not sure where I'm going to fall on them yet. I like the innkeeper a good amount, but like, I don't know if they do enough for this film to give them a 1. I could be convinced easily either way, I think. So I'm going to let you guys.
They're
hash
a
it out.
fairly good rabble. And every good fairy tale needs
that.
a rabble.
I agree with you.
That was perfectly said.
I have in my notes,
Perfectly
sir,
said.
literally villagers with pitchforks.
Rabble, rabble, rabble.
And there's a lot of head slapping going on in this.
Yeah. I feel like that's
Some would say too much.
perhaps,
Yeah, some
perhaps a
would say
cultural thing.
But
But no, I will agree. I think the innkeeper actually did have an arc, right? He set up like sort of bumbling, sort of like absent-minded a bit, but he tries to like stop them, his drunken yokels, from like going too far, right? He stands them down. They basically have a standoff with each other, and he forces them back down at the end to like sort of calm everybody back down and leave the blacksmith alone. Let him do his like going to hell journey thing, if you will. And I think like, given that it's, again, a small rural town, like, the villagers, I believed, were the people who lived there.
also, Satriel, although with an annoying voice, has a
lot of
full arc.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point.
Yeah. He was a well-rounded character.
And I can't make him. I would put him nowhere near the antagonist role. So like, yeah.
So
I
if
guess
he
has
falls
to be
here?
supporting.
And I thought non-verbally, the actor did a fantastic job with him. He did a really good job with him.
But what about verbally?
Especially under all that prosthetics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe he was like a cowardly little, like, scheming demon, if you will.
All right, you guys got me.
It worked. Yeah. All right.
I'll give it a 1.
One's around. Alrighty, E. Why don't you talk about the dialogue now?
As I mentioned already, it's done in Basque. It's a beautiful language, and it adds a level of authenticity. Although perhaps the style, but other than
I think
that,
it's both.
It's kind of there's narration at the beginning, and end, which classic kind of fairy tale thing. I enjoy the humor in here. It's somewhat slapsticky, but it's a little,
but not too much, right?
Yeah.
Not too forceful.
I think it's not nothing really particularly. What's actually very interesting to me is how I saw this movie twice. Actually, I saw this when it first came out, and then again for this. I watched it in English the first time around. The English translation is completely different than
and
the
inferior, it seems. You're saying,
yeah, it's very much inferior. Wow. And not only do you have the kind of weird, the lips don't match the dialogue,
I hate
but
that.
It's just weird that contextually it's different story actually, and so I don't know. I think it feels like a fairy tale movie in dialogue and style and all of that, and so I'm gonna give it I think a softer one, but a one nonetheless.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I don't much more to add. I feel largely the same way. Like for what it is, I think it gets you where you need to go, and in fact, like, is a bit more engaging than it even like needs to be, if you will, and as a baseline thing. And a couple of things maybe laugh like here and there, like right. Good fairy tales have like at least a few moments of like chuckles or levity like sprinkled in, and yeah, like for the fact that it's spoken, like as you mentioned, or one of you, that it was a banned language at the time of the fictional events that it's referencing. I think that all works pretty well, and I was never like off put by the dialogue in any way. So.
I do like the sound of Basque being spoken, but I think I'm going to put that into style in terms of this, because I can't understand it, so it's not dialogue to me. The only dialogue is what I'm reading at the bottom of the screen. And while it wasn't bad, I'm not sure it was good enough for a 1. I thought that it was
I see you.
decent. But if I'm looking for
a weaker link or something
yeah,
like that.
if I'm looking at like our questions and I'm saying like, what do I think were the weaker parts of this movie? I think dialogue is one of them, because I liked the style. We already talked about everything else, but I don't think there's much that stands out in this in terms of dialogue.
Not the chickpeas.
I mean, the chickpeas again go into like almost plot and.
So may I make an actual Satriel for most of the time is a captive. You know he's conniving, but you see him in a place of weakness. When the townsfolk raid the blacksmith shop, you actually see Satriel in practice of slowly turning them against each other. And you see why Satriel, even if he's captured now, was at one point a menacing demon and could have risen in the ranks enough to get to that point.
Perhaps even better, you realize that... Here's the thing. I feel like... Sartael, Satriel, whatever. The demon is almost like... You were supposed to believe that he's doing that, but then you come to realize that it was actually Alistair who was turning them against each other. And I think that's even a better turn on top of like that whole thing. I guess I have to give that to dialogue.
So how does that feed into your score?
I think you might have convinced me to give it a 1.
Yeah, all right. Very nice.
1
for you, Chris, as well.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I think it works, but I think, yeah, that's a nice little avenue there you point out, Ian. Certainly flips Devo, it seems like. But I think it worked either way, like, regardless. But that one specifically is a good example. Alrighty, then. Let's move on to style, in fact. And, Chris, that'll be you.
I loved the style of this film. From the open credits where you have the animation at the beginning.
I love that shit, yeah.
Wasn't that fantastic? Yeah. To the again, like Pan's Labyrinth or Fearless Vampire Hunters, where we have sets and you have location shooting, and they kind of blend together, which creates an overall surreal kind of, that really plays into the whole fantasy aspect of it. I loved Hell, where it was just like orange and flame, and like everything else was black behind it. The use of negative space was great. Yeah.
I love kind of almost, especially of Alistair, It's almost like a shadow puppet. I guess.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. For the effects for what they were pretty.
And they did really, they really took a lot. Like the demon costumes really took a lot. And I did read this, so took a lot from like the old, the illustrations of the medieval and so forth. Which again, she calls out at some point. So there was like, and they actually showed. They did this stylistically. This film is just a beautiful film to look at, and it's got a lot of nuance to it, and I love it. So it's getting a very strong one from me.
It is. Well, it is. It's like for the production value, which is clearly fairly low. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned earlier, it almost looks like a made-for-TV movie, but they did a lot with what they had, and I have to give credit for that. I think that, using the animation in the beginning, the way that they displayed the demons, was like, especially like Sartayel was like very, like a little bit hokey almost, but he looked pretty good for
that.
And I'm so glad they didn't CGI his tail. You could definitely tell that thing was not like a whipping CGI.
I feel like they had some fucking PA behind him,
of course,
like waving a tail back and forth.
But the thing is, funny enough, if they had CG'd it, then there would have been more of an uncanny valley effect than I think of just having it be a practical thing.
Yeah, I liked what they did with the style, and I got to give them credit for doing a lot with
the limited
what I
budget
assume
that
they had. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't super low budget, but I don't think it was very high budget either.
No, clearly. I mean, I mostly agree. I thought you might bring up the soundtrack, which I thought was pretty solidly matched. It wasn't like super memorable, but when it was there, it was nice. And opening animation for sure. And the one other thing I wanted to say is that some of the shots, at least early on, when they're doing establishing shots of the village, I was like, oh, it's just Dracula again, but for the 21st century, right? Like it's a standard European village, but it still worked and it's fine. So I'll give it a 1 on that front.
The devil's in the detail of the devils.
Nice.
No, but I'm a big sucker for well done period pieces, and it was very believable for being that. Granted, I'm kind of forgiving it because of it's kind of low budgetness makes it charming.
Exactly.
It almost reminded me of like old. There was like a Jim Henson Storytellers show.
Yes.
It kind of almost reminded me of that, which was a fucking great show. If you guys haven't seen that, go watch it immediately.
I mean, this is a few Muppets away from being
right.
production.
It is.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm pretty much agreeing. I'm going to give it a damn solid 1, probably a more stronger one on style front.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so that'll bring me home to recommendation. Technically, I sort of did because again, we're trying to expand, like figure out like a couple of good foreign horror films for this season to do, and this one sort of came up on a list that I was looking at, and it was easily available. I think it did not overstay its welcome at all, and as we also talked out, it's quite enjoyable. It's a good enjoyable ride to just throw on. Like, it's a good dark fairy tale done in a foreign region that you may not be familiar with, but pulled off well for the budget that they had.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pretty solidly recommend it.
A few years ago, I found myself sitting at home alone on Halloween, looking for a movie to watch, and I ended up watching Addams Family, which I highly recommend. It was a good time, but this would be a perfect movie to just if you're like sitting around waiting to do something on Halloween, or like just if it's a Halloween and you're feeling in a spooky mood, this is like the perfect movie to just throw on. It's like an hour and a half?
Like hour 40.
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
It's a perfect movie to just put on and like have a little bit of a like campy, but really like a spooky type of movie, and it's just a fun ride and like a nice little fairy tale. So I recommend it. I would say check it out.
I agree. Pretty much how I stand.
So I saw this twice. I forgot about it the first time I watched it. But I enjoyed watching it again. And sitting through a movie a second time and still liking it, it says something. I think it's a worthwhile time.
Okay.
So,
I agree. I agree with Steve-O. This is like the cinematic equivalent of like, getting a warm mulled cider and sitting down. It's just a very comforting film. It's very, very enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix. Definitely.
Yeah, again, easily available, and I think for all that, it's easily consumed. So yeah. All right, so I think any final thoughts before I give out the scores, my friends?
No.
Okay, here we go. So, Chris, you've given it a perfect 10, which you gave the caveat for about earlier. So
yeah, I gave it like an 8 or a 9. Sure. If on a scale of
and
all
the rest
films.
of us, myself, Steve-O, and Ian have given it 9, so that's a 9.2, I believe, overall from doing it.
Number 2.5, yeah.
Which is pretty good. Like you said, it would be an enjoyable movie to put on, sit in front of the fire, have a nice warm mug or something, and just watch it and enjoy it, and then go on.
I think that its charm carries a lot of it.
Yeah.
And
I would agree with that, too.
Watch it, I think we all agree, watch it in the Basque.
Yeah, for sure. Watch it with the original language and subtitled. And yeah, man, so there you have it. Errementari, pretty fucking solid and enjoyable dark fairy tale for this season's Halloween. So I think that'll do it. I will be capturing my own demons later on tonight. I've been Scott Thurlow. I've been here with Stephen Amosi.
Have a good night.
Jonathan Ian Manzer.
I'm still counting the chickpeas.
Of course. And Chris Morgan.
Get into the pumpkin and out at the square.
Indeed. And we'll see you next time. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.